Chuck Holton is here to tell us what's happening in Ukraine right now. Chuck, you have gotten very little sleep over the last week or so, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But since you're actually there, maybe you could tell us where exactly are you and what is the scene like right now?
I'm in Kyiv. I'm in the southern part of Kyiv, about probably 4 or 5 miles from actual downtown Kyiv. I can see it from here. I'm on the 17th floor of a hotel, and we are choosing to be here because it's probably the safest part of all of Kyiv right now. But that could change at any time, of course.
Right, because I'm reading reports that it's under siege right now. The capital's under siege, and that Zelensky was offered a ride out by the U.S. and he said, "I need ammunition, not a ride." And they're
That's
like
right.
in it for the long haul, and they're going to fight. But at the same time, I'm also hearing they're just telling guys between 18 and 60 you can't leave, and just like, here's a gun or learn how to make a Molotov cocktail. So it's hard to know on the outside, like, is this a what kind, I guess, of defensive is this in the capital, or I guess just generally speaking? I guess what's the sense you're getting for like how, I don't know if the word's professional, but just how this matches the Russian forces?
Let's just say that while their armed forces, or at least the men under arms in Ukraine right now, may not be the most professional soldiers, they are certainly the most motivated soldiers because they are fighting for literally the existence of their country. They are this is an existential issue for them. So yes, the president's doing all the above because he's fighting the second largest military on the planet with a very small country, and it's a David and Goliath story. It really is. So yes, the president refused an offer to leave the country in uh, cowardice, like the president of Afghanistan did, and instead asked for a very, very small portion of the $86 billion we left in Afghanistan worth of military hardware. And he himself is putting on a flak vest and picking up a rifle and going out and leading the men of his country in combat. This is a Minutemen moment for Ukraine. Any able-bodied person that wants to pick up a rifle, they will issue you a rifle, even if you're not a Ukrainian, and they will send you out and ask you to help in the defense of their country. And it's working. It's amazing how quickly the advance has been stopped. The Russians are now sort of licking their wounds tonight. Last night, out my window here was just constant explosions and gunfire, and tonight is quiet. And they didn't see much during the day today either, because every time they try to move their tanks, they get their tanks get killed by a U.S. made Javelin missile that we handed to them. So the Ukrainians are not going down without a fight, and Russia may very well take Kyiv in the next few days or few weeks. They may very well annex this country. I mean, they obviously have a lot of assets that they can throw at this, but uh, the people of Ukraine are going to make sure that it costs them dearly, and it already has. I mean, they've shot down two IL-76 cargo jets. There's only 900 of those things ever made, and this is one of the largest cargo jets on the planet. And they would not be risking those things, flying them in here, if it weren't for the fact that their supply chains are already overstretched, and they need to get supplies to their troops, and that's the only way they can do it. But it's not working because they're getting shot down. So some good news on that front.
What is civilian life like there right now for people who are not participating in combat at this point? Are people able to go out into the street and go to the grocery store? I mean, how is life for the average person living in these zones, especially like for children?
Yeah.
I guess, could you describe the scene for me for them?
good question. Everything's closed and everything's in short supply. If they do encircle Kyiv and lay siege to it, people are going to get hungry pretty quick. It's going to. I mean, this is like something out of World War One at this point. I mean, it's unbelievable. Since nothing's open, people are the people who haven't been able to leave. The only people left in Kyiv now are people who could not leave or would not leave. Either they didn't have the wherewithal to get a train ticket or whatever, or they wanted to stay and fight. That's the only two kinds of people left. And those who are not fighting are mostly hiding in bomb shelters in their basements. Every building over here, Soviet era building, has a bomb shelter in its basement because they were planning to survive American nuclear strike when they built those buildings. So we actually did them a favor in a way. And everybody's hiding out in their bomb shelters. How long they can hold out there if they get laid siege to is anybody's guess. There may come a time where we've got to find a way to get supplies into these people. They certainly did not prepare very well because they really didn't believe this was going to happen. I mean, up until the day of the invasion, people were out walking their dogs and just acting normal, going to work. And we'd say, are you not concerned about this, impending Russian invasion? And they said, no, I'm not concerned. But once it happened, then they all went to the grocery store at once and just cleaned everything out. Zombie apocalypse.
Is that because this idea of a Russian invasion is discussed so often, or just the conflict with Russia is, I mean, even our media talks about it a lot. We've been discussing it, I mean, at least a decade, just Russia and Ukraine. So I'm just curious, like, is it just like hurricanes in Florida? Like it just might happen and we're not going to leave. Mm-hmm. And they're just used to it. Whereas like, if I heard that, Canada was going to invade Washington State where I live, I would take it a little more seriously, even though I don't think the Canadians can mount that response at this point, but we'll see.
That's exactly right. It's like hurricanes in Florida. They are so inured to the threat from Russia because they've been living under this for 8 years, and there have been times where he's bowed up on them before and didn't do anything. So they just were like, nah, and I have people who go, I wish he'd just either do it or not do it. I'm tired of him pretending. So now maybe they might take those words back.
Before we get to the rest of this video with Chuck Holton, don't forget there are a couple ways you can support my work. The first is check out AllisonMorrow.locals.com and become part of my editorial board. If you sign up there, you can submit questions for people like Chuck ahead of time before the interviews and hear from them directly. Also, check out my sponsors, AllisonWinePromo.com. That's Allison with 1L WinePromo.com. You get 50% off of some of my favorite Malbecs from Argentina, some from very high altitudes, one from the oldest vineyard in Argentina, and you get 50% off shipping. These are very high quality wines. They use no flavoring, no filtering, no dyes, and no excess chemicals. You can also grab some coffee in honor of free speech and support my work. Go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, twinenginecoffee.com/Allison. These are USDA certified organic Nicaraguan roasts and also high altitude. The CEO of the small company lives in Nicaragua where they grow, harvest, and roast the beans. There is a wide variety of them, as well as a Caturra tea, which is tea that you brew using the coffee fruits. You can do hot or cold. I cold brew mine for 24 hours. So check out AllisonMorrow.locals.com. Become a supporter over there. Become a part of my editorial board, or check out my sponsors and drink to free speech wherever you are. Now let's get back to this discussion with Chuck Holton. For everybody that isn't over on Locals, go to AllisonMorrow.locals.com. You can submit questions for people like Chuck and get answered directly, which is way better than CNN. So I don't even know why you're still watching CNN if you are. Anyway. So Still Lessons is basically saying, I think you kind of answered this, but maybe you have more thoughts. Depending on the narrative you're seeing, you'll hear Western side that Ukrainians are repelling the Russians with heavy Russian losses. From the Russian sources, it's a matter of days and the Ukrainian military is going to be surrendering. Which appears more accurate to you?
That is completely accurate. What you just said is completely accurate. Actually, if you flip through the TV channels and look at the different TV stations, you'll get a different story based on the political leanings or the sponsor, backer of whatever TV station you're looking at. So if it's RT, it's going to be saying one thing. If it's CNN, it's going to be saying one thing. If it's, excuse me, if it's Turkish television, you're going to see another thing. I mean, everybody's got their spin. I think when it comes to the two governments giving their uh, take on what's happening, sorry, you have to kind of take them both with a grain of salt. So Ukraine says that they have killed something like 3,000 Russians already. I mean, that'd be nice, but that's probably not quite accurate. The Russians say that they've lost. I don't know that they've even officially released any casualty figures, but the only one I saw was something like 54. We know it's more than that. And so, like some of the monitoring organizations, the UN, the OCSE, whatever, the operation, Organization for Cooperation and Security in Europe, OCSE. When they come out with numbers, they're probably the closest you're going to get to accurate numbers. And what they say right now is that Russian troops have lost about 450 troops, which is significant losses for them. They had 160 guys on that cargo aircraft that was shot down last night. So that's a big blow. This is already becoming much more bloody for Russia than they expected. And we are getting a good picture of the readiness, the training, the effectiveness of their military. And remember, it's a conscript army, so these guys didn't ask for this. They got called up to do it, and so they're not nearly as motivated as the Ukrainian military, and that is an X factor that really adds some weight or some punch to the Ukrainians.
If you want to see the entire conversation that we had or the entirety of the commentary that you're watching, please go to one of my other platforms. One of the best places to go is AllisonMorrow.locals.com, where you can become part of my editorial board and pose questions ahead of time for interviews. I also do live editorial board meetings on Saturdays. You can bring your feedback from the week before and pose ideas for guests and topics for the week ahead. But whatever you do, don't stay here on YouTube. If you want the full truth about what's happening around us, you gotta go somewhere else.